from Pittsburgh, writes for the Associated Press. He's going to give us the inside scoop, we think, on the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is Will Graves. Will, Dave, Jason, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
What's up, guys? Happy to be here.
So Pittsburgh is on, I would say, I could be wrong here, I would say on the AFC side, people are talking a lot about the Jets. They've got that hard knocks push, but a lot of people also talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. No one better than Mike Tomlin at prepping teams. They obviously have TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, and they've got some good young offensive folks as well. Do you agree? Is this a year that Pittsburgh makes a little bit of a leap?
I certainly think there's every reason. The optimism sometimes in this city is ill-founded. I would say this time around it's well-founded. It's kind of hard not to be. I mean, look, when your first team offense is on the field for 5 series and they score 5 touchdowns in the preseason, I know it's the preseason, but it's really hard to not go, oh, well, maybe they figured a little bit out. And obviously the defense, it's the most expensive defense in the league. It's also, when healthy, one of the best defenses in the league. So I think, I think it's still a team whose identity rests on the defensive side, but I think that they think, and they probably should, that they're going to be better than they were last year. And look, they went from 2-6 to 9-8, and I think that they feel the momentum they built the second half of the season is going to carry over into 2023.
Well, what does Kenny Pickett then have to do? It's his job now. You mentioned they got a great defense. That's the anchor. What does he have to do to really back that whole thing and support it to make that offense what they need to be?
I think last year they asked him to not lose games. And then a couple of times you saw at the end of the regular season, against the Ravens, especially, and against the Raiders on Christmas Eve, like he won games late. I think they're going to try to ask him to maybe win games earlier. I think that the one thing this team lacked last year was any downfield presence at all. I mean, their longest touchdown was 31 yards. Which is not something. Look, in today's NFL, if you've got to snap the ball 15 times and score a touchdown, you're not going to win a lot of games that way. So I think what they want Kenny to do is make plays that turn 12-play drives into 6-play drives. They've got the George Pickens, talented second-year wide receiver, big dude, kind of hard not to, drool when you see him, because you think, man, I could throw the ball anywhere within a 15-yard radius. He's going to catch it. So I think for Kenny, last year they wanted to win games 20-17. I think this year they think they can win games 24-17. So a little bit extra from Kenny Pickett would probably go a long way to helping this team compete in the AFC.
As we talked to Will Graves, who works for the Associated Press out there in Pittsburgh. Will, you mentioned the receivers, and if not just for the alliteration, Pickett to Pickens would be a fun combo for years to come. Deontay Johnson's uber talented. Claypool moves on. I thought one of the sneakiest, quietest, like nobody's talking about it, additions to any team was Allen Robinson over the summer. This is a guy that is just busting with talent, was forgotten towards the end of his career in Chicago, where he had some 1,000-yard years, and then just completely written out by McVay and the Rams. I feel like at 30 years old, he's coming in there as maybe the third option on a guy that could be a wide receiver too on a ton of other teams. Is there some cautious optimism about maybe him having a comeback year there in Pittsburgh?
Well, I think, you mentioned him as the third option here. I'd put him at maybe the fourth option. They have Pat Freiermuth there, third year end, who Kenny loves, especially in the red zone. And when he can stay healthy, he's had some concussion issues, is probably a top 10 tight end in the league. So, but I think Robinson, look, he brings a veteran presence to a group that needs it. And the Steelers have done this. When they had the Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster group, they had they had Darius Hayward-Bay, who was a guy that had sort of flamed out with the Raiders, but carved a niche as a special teams guy and as a glue guy. Before that, they had Jericho Cotchery back when they had Mike Wallace and Emmanuel Sanders. So, they've always, I think Allen fits more into that leadership role. And look, he's a guy I think that on 3rd and 6 they're going to look for, but it would be, I really do think he is firmly, and I didn't see much in the preseason. Now he wasn't on the field a ton with Pickett, so it's kind of hard to tell the comfort level there. But I really think that he's probably, the 4th or 5th option, and is more the guy in the room, especially with a guy like Pickens, who I'm not going to say he had maturity issues, but you just wonder. Like, there were a couple times last year where he didn't get the ball. He was a little demonstrative, and look, that's fine. That's you want guys that want the ball, but does it get to a point where becomes destructive? And I think that that Robinson is in there to maybe be a random third down guy, but also to sort of teach these guys how to be pros.
Well, you mentioned the defense. That is the strength of the team. It's been the strength. And the Niners offense should be good, but Brock Purdy still relatively new in this league. What do you envision Pittsburgh trying to do and unleash on Purdy on Sunday?
My guess would be they're just going to, try to put as much pressure on him and make him make as many quick decisions as possible. This is the Steelers last year. It's you don't want to say one guy sort of defines a team, but when TJ Watt went down in week 1, it took them a long time to kind of figure themselves out. And then when he came back, they looked like the Steelers again. So I really look, he's healthy. They have Alex Highsmith. They've got depth there now. They got, Nick Herbig looks like a steal of a 4th-round guy. They've got a good defensive line. So I would expect them to pressure Purdy. The X factor there, of course, is how do you defend Christian McCaffrey if you're the Steelers? And Terrell Austin, their defensive coordinator, said yesterday, we're going to have 12 guys on the field. It sounds like might be the soundest plan to stop a McCaffrey. But, Purdy is a guy that look, I full disclosure here. I grew up a Washington fan in the 80s, right? So they're sort of my team. And what Shanahan was able to do with RG3 and with Kirk Cousins and with basically any quarterback he has, it's sort of remarkable, right? And I think the Steelers are going to try to figure out, is Purdy just a product of this system that Kyle seems to find everywhere he goes, or is he a dude? And I think the way to find that out is to put as much pressure on him as possible and see what he's got.
Well, Graves of the AP Pittsburgh joining us right now, talking about the game this weekend, 10 a.m. our time, Niners-Steelers to kick off the Niners and Steelers seasons. You talked about the defense. One of my favorite players in the NFL is Minkah Fitzpatrick. I love everything about this kid. I get Miami rebuilt just fine, but that trade was an absolute theft for Pittsburgh. I saw an article the other day that he cordoned off the logo in the locker room. He's doing all kinds of extra leadership things. How special is this kid, and how important is he to Mike Tomlin in that team?
I think he's super important. I mean, he's a guy. I mean, and he's not just the quarterback of the defense. He and Kenny Pickett will spend a lot of time together privately. There's sort of like a room off of the one of the meeting rooms. There's a smaller room that's got a couple of computers in it set up, and Minkah and Kenny will be up there early in the morning and then into the evening. And not only is Minkah looking at the other team's offense, he's showing Kenny things to look for when Kenny's looking at the other team's defense. So I mean, I think he understands that in Pittsburgh, if you're a really good safety for the Pittsburgh Steelers for a long time, your career probably ends in Canton. I think that he's in the prime of his career now. I certainly thinks he's on that track. I think he embraces that. Super smart guy, and just really, a quiet guy. He's not going to be the guy that's going to be on the field pumping dudes up. He is more cerebral, but just an innate ability to sort of know where the ball's going and find it at very opportune times for the Steelers.
That's Will Graves, AP Pittsburgh. Last thing, two of us picked the Niners. One of us picked the Steelers. Who do you have coming out of this Sunday's game?
Look, I think the Niners are more talented, but I would say this, a couple things. Kyle Shanahan's 2-4 in week 1 with the 49ers. 2 years ago, the Steelers went into Buffalo and had won a game they had no right winning. Yeah. Absolutely no right winning. Last year, they went into Cincinnati and won a game they absolutely had no right winning. So if we're going to come to, I think the margin is narrow. If we're going to go to coaches in this particular circumstance, I would give a slight edge to the Steelers in a field goal game.
Okay. That's Will Graves, AP, out there in Pittsburgh. Good luck this weekend. Hopefully nobody gets hurt. We have a great game, as we always say. Appreciate you joining us. Love the background as well. The brick and everything. It's well done. And we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you, Will.
All right. Take care, guys.
All right. We will take a break. When we come back, what we learned last night, Lions 1-point win over the defending champions on the road, and our final 45 minutes with Jay Mars, ever, as he leaves us for
ever
more bureaucratic pastures. We'll get right. Well, that's actually a question too. We'll be right back. SactownSports.com.
Check out the Golf to Go Hour with Frank LaRosa every week on Sactown Sports.